Hey guys, it's Psychosis again, and once again, I'm giving you guys another book review. And this time, I'm doing one on a book that everyone probably knows. It's kind of a classic, and that is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. And most people probably have read this book, but I've I've never read this book until now. I tried reading it when I was a lot younger, and I just didn't finish it. I don't know why. I must have been retarded or something. I had a hard time reading it. Except now I read it and I didn't have that issue. But yeah, today I'm reading The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. As you can see, my version is like the movie cover, which I'll talk about that soon a bit. But yeah, as you can see, there's an eye. It's pretty cool. And as you can see, it came with a box set. I got all the books and Lord of the Ring trilogy as well. But today, we're just reviewing The Hobbit, which is the prequel prelude book to The Lord of the Rings. And because of that, the nice thing with this book is you don't have to read it to understand the trilogy. And yeah, so you could read it before, after, you could never touch it. But yeah. But this is the prequel, kind of the events that happened before the trilogy kicked off, like decades before the Lord of the Rings trilogy. But like I said, everyone probably knows the series. I don't want to go too much into all the lore of Middle-earth, Tolkien's fantasy world, because else people probably know, because Lord of the Rings is probably like the most popular fantasy series of all time, probably the most popular series out there among series. But yeah, so today I'm reviewing The Hobbit, like I said, because never read it all these years I've lived, and wanted to read it to get back in the trilogy and see how it fares compared to the trilogy. And I will say this book is excellent. This book is really good. Obviously, people say it's excellent, but I want to see for myself. It's really good. The book's not the longest book. My copy is about 305 pages. But yeah, and it's a standalone book by itself. The adventure is its own thing. So you don't have to read it to understand the trilogy. Like I said, you could read it after, like I did. But it's been a long time since I read The Lord of the Rings. So yeah. But yeah, and that's just kind of like an intro adventure. It's its own little isolated adventure. So this wizard named Gandalf the Grey, he goes up. He and a bunch of 13 dwarves, this group of 13 dwarves, they join up together and they go to this hobbit's house named Bilbo Boggins, and they hire him to find a way to this mountain. The Lonely Mountain is called, and they want to go there because this evil dragon named Smaug has stolen all their gold and basically taken what the dwarves claim is their inheritance, or at least Thorin does. Thorin's the leader of the dwarves, and he's like kind of like royalty figure. And yeah, there's 12 other dwarves, but I always tend to forget their names, and the book doesn't always name them. There's like 13 of them. It's hard to keep track. And it describes their appearance, but you kind of just forget and you kind of just go with the flow of the story. And the story is excellent. But yeah, Ford's like the leader, and they hire Bilbo, and he's just Hobbit, and Hobbits aren't really adventurous little creatures, but he goes anyways, and discovers there's more in him than he realizes and stuff. And then along the way, he finds a magic ring that turns invisible when he puts it on. And yeah, and starting off, yeah, and it all culminates into a battle at the end of the book. That's kind of like a really rough rundown of since the book is basically their journey, and because of that, it's not really an action-paced book. So if you're expecting like tons of battles and fights and page-turning scenes, this book doesn't have that, and that's fine. It's just slower pace as a heads up. If you have never read this book, it's really slower pace. They go on their adventure basically, so it's just a journey from one point A to point B, and along the way there is some drama, of course, fun little things on their adventure like trolls, goblins, all that stuff. And yeah, and eventually they do find Smaug, and he dies before the end of the book. I'm not gonna spoil how, but yeah. And like I said, Bilbo finds a ring and it turns him invisible, and he tries to keep it a secret for most of the book. And he wins it through a bunch of riddles. And I will say, this is where I was retarded. I didn't understand the riddles at first, but they're pretty really clever riddles. But now I know them. They're really good riddles, because he has a riddle contest with this little creature named Gollum. And yeah, by for a thing of trickery, he gets the ring and steals it from this little creature named Gollum. And yeah, kind of probably know that there's a lot of movies. They've turned all these books into movies, and a lot of people have probably read the series. It's like a really insanely popular series. Probably really inspired the fantasy genre the most. But I'm just reviewing it because I've never read it. And yeah, it's really excellent. But like I said, it is slower paced. So there are some parts that may seem a little slow. And I can kind of see where some people say this series is overrated. Or these books could be overrated. Is they're really slower paced. And also it's the way Tolkien writes. Like his prose, he goes very descriptive with his prose. So he could spend like several sentences talking about the scenery and where they're going and what it's like. And that could be a turnoff to some people, but it also helps to paint a picture of where they are in the book and what exactly they're seeing around them. And it helps you to paint a picture of what's going on and why they're scared or why they're distressed, the characters. Yeah. And Gandalf isn't with him the whole time too. I should mention that he's there for like the first half of the book, and then he disappears until the end. Yeah, kind of just a fun adventure story, a tale of people going on an adventure to get their gold, the dwarves basically. It's pretty fun. It's really short paced. The ending is great. I really love the ending. It feels a little rushed and small scaled. That's fine. This book is small scale, like I said. It's its own isolated adventure. Like you don't have to read it to understand the Lord of the Rings trilogy at all. Just help some little backstory of Bilbo Baggins, who's the relative of the main character of the trilogy, Frodo Baggins. But yeah, and this book's really excellent. The ending was great. Made me a little sad at the end. One of the characters dies. Well, one of the characters, he dies, and that was really sad. And yeah, it also makes me mad reading this book now, because comparing it to the movies, at least from what I remember the movies, they changed a lot in the movies from this book, and a lot of the changes seem really unnecessary, like as if they just did it to try to make the movie seem more exciting and more action paced, and they didn't need to do that. They'd be amazing movies regardless. And maybe that's kind of why the Hobbit movies faltered compared to the original trilogy. But we're not talking about the movies. It's about the book. And yeah. Book is excellent, really slower pace, like I said. I keep saying that, but that's really what it is. Just want to hone that point down. Because I've seen some people say this series is a little overrated. And I can see where people will not be the biggest fans of the series and be turned off by it because it's slower paced and his writing is very descriptive. And then randomly he uses queer as a descriptive word a bunch, and it's just random because I've never seen it used in writing before, and he uses it a ton and it works, but it's just random. It's just really random. And yeah. But yeah, very excellent book. Highly recommend reading this book. It is a classic. It is a classic book. My edition's themed around the movie. So there's an eyeball. There's the actor for Bilbo. And yeah. But it is an excellent book. I'd highly recommend reading the book. And it is an isolated adventure. And I would totally read it again. And I'm glad that I read it, and just seeing how much I've grown as a person, because younger me must have been retarded, like I said, because I struggled to read through it at the beginning. In the beginning, which is kind of funny, but the beginning is also the slowest part of the book. Like, it really picks up a bit towards the end, but the beginning can be really slow. I can see where it could turn people off reading it or not finishing it. And it is harder, from what I remember, it is a little bit harder to read compared to the trilogy, Lord of the Rings trilogy. Because the writing and the way that characters talk, it seems different and just out there compared to how we're used to people communicating in books, like characters. But yeah, it is really good. And if you're able to get through the slower pacing of this book, you'll find yourself reading a very excellent fantasy story. And yeah, I like the fact there's a dragon in it too. I love dragons, except the dragon's the villain. But he's an intelligent dragon. I love intelligent dragons, especially. I hate dragons that are these stupid primal sluggish animals. But just really excellent book. 9 out of 10. Highly recommend reading it. It is a classic, but it definitely deserves the title of classic. And yeah, but I will say I do enjoy, from what I remember, I did enjoy the trilogy better than this book. And most people probably will enjoy the trilogy better, because that's kind of where he fleshes out Middle Earth and has a true grand adventure, epic high fantasy, whatever you want to call it. And really where that concept of Middle Earth really shines and is the high example of what fantasy is. Because I can kind of see where many authors got their idea of fantasy, and that a lot of people really took inspiration from Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. But yeah, and so eventually I will read these, but for now I've got other books to read. But I will say I do remember reading The Lord of the Rings and liking them better than The Hobbit from my experience being when I was younger. But it's been years since I read them, so I'll have to reread them eventually and see how they compare to the movies and The Hobbit itself, and whether I actually am right saying that the trilogy is better than The Hobbit. I think so, but we'll see. And yeah, 9 out of 10, The Hobbit. Great book. Excellent book. And yeah, that'll be my review for The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. And anyways, that's my review. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If there's any recommendations for me to read, let me know in the comments, or any constructive criticism, just let me know. Or album recommendations, anything goes. I love listening to new music. I love reading books. I'm trying to get into reading. That's why I'm doing these videos. Just reading what's on my shelf, rereading stuff that I read when I was younger, etc., etc. It's just fun reading, trying to fix my life a little bit, trying to become a more busybody person, feeling more accomplished in myself in life. But yeah, that will be my review for The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. Let me know what you think, and I will see you all in the next video I make. Goodbye.